I've been in 6 foster homes since I was 12, and none of them stuck until Diane. The social workers called her a miracle worker. I'm 17 now, and I've been here 8 months. I've been here longer than anywhere else. Diane runs her house. She does not allow clubs or sports because she thinks they're distractions. Every night after dinner, I scrub the dishes while Clara watches TV in the next room. Diane calls it building responsibility. I call it being the only one in the house who doesn't get to sit down after eating. Last month, during my routine check-in with the social worker, Diane talked over me the whole time. She praised my progress and said I was finally learning discipline. The social worker didn't look at me once. Afterward, I overheard Diane in the kitchen with Clara. She said that I was a lost cause and always picking fights and never grateful. My file was open on the table. I didn't stick around to see what else she'd written. Clara's 19. She's quiet, always folding into herself when Diane's around. But once, when Diane was out, she gave me an extra granola bar from the pantry. She whispered not to let Mom see. I didn't know what to do with that. Then there's Maya. Diane calls her motivated. 2 weeks ago, Maya got a birthday dinner. My birthday was in March. Diane forgot. When I mentioned it, she said that I didn't remind her. I work weekends at a diner downtown. I've saved almost $300 for a GED prep book. Diane takes 30% of my paychecks for room and board. The math doesn't add up. My stipend from the state should cover that. But when I asked, she said that foster care is not free and walked away. Last week, I spiked a fever. Diane refused to pick up my antibiotics. She said I was old enough to handle it. I collapsed in the hallway trying to get water, and Clara drove me to the clinic. The doctor said it was strep, verging on scarlet fever. Diane rolled her eyes and muttered that I was a drama queen in the car. 3 days ago, I found my foster file in her office. Under behavioral notes, she had written manipulative and unlikely to graduate. My grades are all Bs. I've never missed a curfew. But there it was. At dinner that night, I asked why she lied to the social worker. The room went dead quiet. Clara froze mid-bite. Diane set her fork down and said that I would be homeless at 18 anyway, and questioned why I bothered. Later, Clara left Advil and canned soup outside my door. No note. I didn't eat it. Yesterday, I found Diane's ledger. She had been logging stipends for therapy sessions I've never had. Hundreds of dollars siphoned off every month. I called my social worker this morning. Her business card was in the trash. Diane must have tossed it after telling me that they don't care about troublemakers. The phone rang 6 times. When she finally answered, I said that I needed help. She's coming tomorrow. Diane doesn't know. My go bag is under the bed. It contains 2 pairs of jeans, my diner uniform, and the cash I've hidden. If this backfires, I'm out of options. Clara caught me zipping the bag. She didn't say anything. She just nodded. I don't know what happens next. All I know is if the system fails me again, I'm done trusting adults. Now for the first update. 3 weeks ago, I posted about my foster mom, Diane. A lot of you asked for an update, so here's where things stand. I'm not sure what I'm looking for. Advice, maybe? Or just, I don't know. It helps to write it down. After I reported Diane to my social worker, nothing happened. Not really. The social worker came over, listened to Diane call my complaints teen rebellion, and gave her a warning. No follow-up, no questions from me. Diane waited until the social worker's car left the driveway before locking the pantry. She told me I could buy my own food with my diner earnings. My paycheck's already stretched thin. 30% goes to Diane for room and board, another chunk for the GED book I'm saving for. That left me with about $20 a week for food, bus fare, everything. Clara started slipping granola bars into my dresser drawer. The first time, she did it while I was folding laundry. She dropped one. She stared at it on the floor, then shoved it into the drawer and walked out. I didn't eat them for 2 days. Part of me thought it was a trap, Diane testing my loyalty, but hunger wins. Then, last Monday, I found a note in my school locker. Just 3 words, "Meet me after school, Clara." No one's ever left me a note before. Not a real one. I almost threw it away. But Clara is the kind of person who apologizes when she bumps into something. If she's risking something, it's not for kicks. She drove us to a park 10 minutes from the house. Didn't speak until she parked under a patchy tree. Then, she said she had done this before. Turns out, Diane's been cycling through fosters too old for adoption. Minimal care, maximum stipend. Clara showed me photos on her phone. A girl named Jess who aged out at 18 with a trash bag of clothes. Another kid, Marcus, who got kicked out after questioning Diane's ledger. I asked how she had these. She said she took screenshots when Diane wasn't looking. Clara's saving money to move out. Works part-time at a dry cleaner's. She can't testify. Diane's her mom, and she said she wasn't strong enough to burn that bridge. But she gave me a composition notebook, told me to document everything. Dates, quotes, mold in my room. I didn't mention I'd already started a journal under my mattress. Diane found out I was texting Clara. Not even about her, just asking if we had more dish soap. She snatched my phone, said I'd stolen it. I paid half the cost, but the plan's under her name. She left me with a burner phone from 2012 that can't even load emails. My boss at the diner noticed the bruises. They're from hauling stock boxes, but they look bad, purple-green smudges on my wrists. She cornered me in the break room, said she'd call CPS. I panicked. I begged her not to. I told her I'd lose my job if Diane found out. She let it go, but now she watches me closely. Diane's new punishment is chores. I spent Saturday scrubbing the garage, found a box of expired foster paperwork behind the water heater, inspection reports from 2 years ago, flagged for mold and a broken lock on my window. Diane told the agency she'd fixed it. She didn't. I slid the documents into my backpack, tearing a corner. Clara's boyfriend saw me crying at the bus stop. I've never talked to him. He's just some guy who picks her up sometimes, but he handed me a burner phone through his car window. He said it was for emergencies. I didn't ask why he had it. Maybe Clara told him. Maybe he's just seen enough. I texted my social worker again. No reply. Clara thinks Diane's friends with her supervisor. I don't know if that's true, but it fits. The system's full of shortcuts. Maya avoids me now. Diane told her not to end up like me, whatever that means. Maya gets straight A's, does volunteer work. But I've seen her flinch when Diane raises her voice. We're all just trying to survive her. I applied for a night shift at the diner. If I work close to full-time, maybe I can save enough to leave when I'm 18. Diane took my tips jar last week. She said I owed her for utilities. Clara replaced it with $50 from her tips at the dry cleaners. I tried to refuse. She said it wasn't for me and that it was so she could sleep. Sometimes I catch Diane watching me, not angry, just calculating. I don't know what she wants. Maybe she never did. I'm not sure what happens next. The social worker's silence is its own answer. Clara's evidence pile grows, but so does the risk. All I know is this. I'm tired of being ignored in someone else's house. Thanks for listening. If anyone's been through something like this, how do you know when to fight and when to run? Now for the second update. 3 weeks ago, I posted about my foster mom, Diane. A lot of you asked for an update, so here's where things stand. I'm not sure what I'm looking for. Advice, maybe, or just, I don't know. It helps to write it down. Diane's big inspection was coming up. She'd been scrubbing the house raw, even bleaching the grout between bathroom tiles. Maya got coached on what to say. Diane told her to express that she loved living there and mention the family movie nights. We've never had a family movie night. Maya nodded, her eyes on the floor. I wondered if she believed any of it. The day before the inspection, Diane cornered me in the kitchen. She told me I would be at the library tomorrow. It was not a request. Her voice was fake calm. She said that I would ruin everything. I didn't argue. Arguing just gives her reasons. Clara slipped me a USB drive later that night. She pressed it into my palm during dinner cleanup. She provided security footage from last year, noting that Diane didn't know she had copied it. The clip showed Diane screaming at some kid. I didn't recognize him, then throwing a textbook against a wall. The timestamp proved she'd lied about her no outbursts policy. I tucked the drive into my sock. My cough came back. My boss at the diner took one look at me and ordered me to urgent care. The doctor asked if I felt safe at home. I said yes. It is automatic now. He prescribed antibiotics. Diane refused to pay, so Clara Venmo'd me the copay. I paid her back in singles from my tips. Diane realized the USB was missing 2 days later. She stormed into the living room, her face red, and accused Clara of stealing. Clara denied it, keeping her voice steady, but her hands were clenched at her sides. They fought for hours. Diane called her a traitor. Clara stated that she was finally growing a conscience. I sat on the stairs, listening. I felt like I should do something. But what? Afterward, Clara told me she's moving out next month. She found a studio apartment near her community college. She said she would send me copies of everything and asked me not to let Diane win. I wanted to ask why she's helping me now, but maybe some questions don't have clean answers. The social worker finally replied to my texts. She suggested that we talk privately at my school so Diane can't intercept that. We met in the counselor's office. I showed her the USB, the expired inspection papers, the mold photos. She flipped through my journal with a tight mouth. For a second, she looked guilty. I nodded as if I believed her. My chest hurt anyway. Diane's been weirdly sweet since the inspection. She bought me a sweater from Target. She said she thought I could use something nice. I checked the seams for tracking devices. Found nothing. Still, I hid it under my bed. I found a letter in the mail last week. Diane's applying to take in 2 more fosters. The letter said, high needs, high stipend. High needs means kids with IEPs or trauma histories. More money for her. I confronted her, the letter crumpled in my hand. She smirked and said that I would be gone soon and questioned why bother. That's the thing about Diane. She's never just angry. She's strategic. Clara's burner phone buzzed yesterday. a photo of Diane's ledger page, 200 monthly stipends for art supplies we never received. Clara didn't include a message, just the photo. It was proof. I stared at it until the screen went dark. My boss offered me full-time hours after graduation. Just minimum wage, but steady. For the first time, I let myself picture it. A studio apartment, maybe. A lock on the door. Diane took my tips jar again. She said it was owed for utilities. The jar had $43. Clara replaced it with $50 from her waitressing job. I tried to give it back. She shook her head and said it wasn't for me and that it was so she wouldn't hate herself. This morning, I woke up to Diane sobbing in the kitchen. The social worker supervisor is coming. Clara's doing. I sat at the top of the stairs, listening to her cry. Part of me wanted to feel satisfied. Mostly, I just felt tired. I don't know what happens next. The supervisor could side with Diane. Clara might back out, but for once, the fear feels smaller than the hope. Thanks for sticking with me through all this. If anyone's been in a similar spot, how do you keep hoping when the system's rigged? I'm trying. Just trying. Now for the final update. 3 weeks ago, I posted about my foster mom, Diane. A lot of you asked for an update, so here's where things stand. I'm not sure what I'm looking for. Advice, maybe, or just, I don't know. It helps to write it down. The supervisor showed up unannounced on a Tuesday. Diane was mid-scrub when the doorbell rang. I'd never seen her move that fast, shoving the cleaner under the sink and smoothing her hair. My journal and the USB drive were already in my backpack. I'd slept with it under my pillow for a week. When the supervisor asked to speak with me alone, Diane's eye twitched. Just once. I handed over everything. My hands didn't shake. Diane tried to cut in, shouting that she was a liar. The supervisor ignored her, turning to Maya instead. The supervisor asked if Maya's room was heated. Maya's face crumpled. She nodded. They interviewed Clara separately. She brought receipts. I didn't know she'd been keeping track. For months, I'd assumed Clara's help was incidental. Turns out she'd been building a case in the quiet moments, stacking evidence. When the supervisor escorted Diane out, she didn't look back, just grabbed her purse and left in a social worker's sedan. The temporary carer arrived an hour later. Maya's old foster mom, she made grilled cheese and didn't ask why I checked the bread for mold. Clara hugged me in the driveway. Her arms were stiff. Clara hugged me and told me that I did it. I stood there, my hands at my sides. The social worker apologized. It was not a generic apology, but an actual admission that she'd failed me. She offered to fast-track my transition to independent living. I said yes before she finished the sentence. My diner boss texted that night. She'd heard about the investigation through a cousin who works CPS. She offered me her garage apartment, $300 a month, utilities included. She told me to pay her when I could. I've never been late on rent, not once. Diane left a sealed envelope on my bed the day she was suspended. I burned it in the backyard while Clara watched from the porch. The paper curled into black ash. Clara visits every Sunday, brings groceries. She asks about my GED prep. I don't tell her I study at night now. Maya texted me last week. She sent a 2-word message expressing gratitude. I stared at my phone for 10 minutes, trying to decide how to respond. In the end, I sent a thumbs-up emoji. My first full paycheck without Diane taking a portion was $214. I bought a secondhand laptop from a guy on Facebook Marketplace. The trackpad sticks, but it runs Khan Academy videos. I'm learning algebra from a guy in India who explains equations. The supervisor called yesterday. Diane's fostering license was revoked. Criminal charges pending for fraud. I sat on the floor of my apartment and breathed. No one yelling, no footsteps overhead. Sometimes I wake up convinced I hear Diane's voice. Then I remember the lock on my door. I get up, make coffee. I turn 18 next month. Clara says she's proud. I don't know how to tell her that pride doesn't reflect my feelings, but I'm saving for community college.